Grindr was supposed to be background noise, pings, small talk, and cautious hope. Then one square lit up, warm eyes, shy smile, bio saying, "Here for more than a hello." We laughed over typos, compared coffee orders, and picked a safe, sunny cafe. I expected awkward silence or polite escape routes. Instead, the room softened, the noise fell away, and his first real-life smile felt like a door opening. Meeting IRL didn't just rewrite our night. It changed everything after forever. Like, subscribe and share. Comment your own meet cute. More real love stories, gentle vibes, and hope. Join our community today, please. I used to keep the app in a little folder called Noise. You know the kind. Food delivery. Old loyalty cards, things you mean to delete but don't because you might need them someday. Grindr was wedged in there like a secret I told myself wasn't a secret. I'd open it when the house felt extra quiet. When the TV sounded like it was talking to itself. When the hum of the refrigerator made me think about the way time keeps going, whether you're ready or not. It wasn't that I thought Grindr couldn't hold anything real. Real people live there. Real laughter, real nerves, real kindness. But I did think of it like a loud room where you have to lean in and say, "What?" 6 times before anyone understands you. It was easier to become a floating head and shoulders, a line or two of text, a distance measured in blocks, and a battery percentage. There's a safety in screens. No one can watch your hands shake. The night it changed, I'd just finished washing my dishes after dinner and, in a very adult move, immediately rewarded myself by not putting them away. I dried my hands on my t-shirt and opened the app. The grid reloaded, a mosaic of lives in tiny squares. Then one square caught me. A soft gray hoodie, a stubbly jaw, eyes that looked like they'd been caught smiling mid-thought. His bio said, "Here for more than hello? Tell me your favorite coffee or your worst dad joke." I stared at that sentence for a minute. "Here for more than hello," sounded like someone reaching a hand across a crowded room and waiting to see if you'd take it. So I sent him a dad joke, the worst one I had, the one my sister loved to hate. "What do you call a fish wearing a bow tie?" I typed. Sophisticated. I considered closing my phone, throwing it under the couch, and moving to another town, because that's how cringe works. Before I could flee my own living room, a reply came in. "That joke is so bad I might have to applaud," he wrote. "I make worse ones. Also, medium Americano, no room, and a cinnamon roll if the line isn't bad." We went back and forth, nothing heavy, like passing a baseball back and forth across a backyard. Every throw just enough to catch. His name was Marco. He worked with folks in their later years, helping them plan the long arc of retirement in a way that felt more like dreaming than budgeting. He used words like gentle and steady. I told him I worked in city planning, which is a fancy way to say I stare at maps and think about the stories pavement tells. "What's your favorite street?" he asked. "Nobody ever asked that," I said. "That's why I asked. A little street in the old part of town," I typed. "It's got trees that touch overhead and a bend that makes the light do something special around 4 p.m. "I think you're supposed to be in a poem," he wrote. "Only if it ends with a grocery list," I said. "Milk, bread, find courage. There are nights when conversation slides out of your hands like water." This wasn't one of those nights. This was a night where I watched the clock, surprised that time kept climbing while we stayed right where we were. And then he did something that felt kind. He said this: "I like that we're talking and I'd like to see you. We can pick a public spot, daytime, no pressure. If it's awkward, we can talk about the weather and wish each other well." It wasn't that I hadn't met people from the app before. I had, sometimes with a knot in my stomach and a smile that felt stapled on. But something about the way he asked felt like he saw the knot and didn't sit on it. Like he made space for awkward without making a home in it. We picked a cafe a few blocks from the park. Sunlit, lots of tables, a menu where you can pronounce everything even if you don't order it. I texted my friend Alicia where I was going, because safety is a love language. I put on the shirt I wear when I want to look like I tried without looking like I tried. I walked there with my heart doing that quick step it does when you're 13, and your hand just brushed someone else's by accident. If this were a movie, I'd tell you the exact song playing when I opened the door and saw him. But all I remember truly is the warmth of the room and the way he stood up a little too fast, like he didn't want me to have to search for him. He was taller than I'd guessed from his photos. Same gray hoodie. Same eyes like they'd learned to smile before his mouth did? Evan? He asked, and I nodded. We shook hands, because sometimes it's brave to start with formal. His hand was cool, not clammy. I decided that was a good omen. He gestured to the counter and said, "I'll get in line. Do you want me to order you something, or do you want to order with me?" Small question, big respect. I said, "Let's go together." The line was short and somehow long. The barista smiled the way baristas smile at two adults who are leaning slightly toward each other without knowing they're doing it. We ordered and sat at a small table near the window. The light landed on the plants in the corner and made them look smug. "I almost wore a real shirt," he said, plucking at his hoodie string. Then I thought, let's start with honesty. "I almost ironed," I said. Then I remembered the last time I ironed a shirt, I left an iron-shaped mark on it. We laughed, and the knot in my stomach loosened. And sometimes laughter is the only ceremony you need to open a door. There's a rhythm to first conversations that I like. It's not the interview. It's not the confessional. It's the friendly walk around someone else's house where they point to the photos and you nod and try to remember names and dates. Marco grew up one town over from me. His mom made tamales every December and sent him home with packs he swore to ration and then ate in a week. He had a nephew who could already whistle. He liked baseball on the radio and the way a game slowed time. He told me shyly, learning to play the guitar again after 20 years away from it. "What's your song so far?" I asked. "I can do all of Landslide if you don't mind me pretending I'm on a porch," he said. "I'm a porch person," I said. In spirit, if not in actual furniture. He asked about my work, and I tried to explain the way a corner lot can feel like hope, or the way a crosswalk is really a promise that cars make to feet. He made space when I got nerdy, and I made space when he said he liked spreadsheets because they are puzzles that tell the truth when you get them right. We talked about little things and big things without labeling either, which might be the secret to making both feel less scary. We talked about coming out in ways that fit us. Him, a slow, steady unfolding. Me, a door that swung open and banged the wall. We talked about times we'd been hurt, just enough to let the other person see the outline without asking them to trace it. When he reached to stir his Americano, our thumbs brushed across the table. It was the kind of touch you can pass off as accidental if you want. Neither of us did. We left our hands there, close but not quite touching, like two birds at the edge of water deciding if it's safe. The first hour passed like a song you play twice. Then we walked. The park wasn't far, and the path was wide enough for us to manage a comfortable side-by-side without bumping elbows. The trees were doing that early spring thing, holding their green behind their hands like a secret. "When I was a kid," he said, "I thought couples were supposed to say everything, like there was a test. I'm learning that sometimes it's nice to be quiet together." "Quiet is special," I said. "People forget that silence can be kind." We sat on a bench near the duck pond. A child threw bread that a sign politely asked him not to throw. The ducks were illiterate and thrilled. Marco leaned back, closed his eyes, and lifted his face to the sunlight like a cat. The line of his jaw was both sharp and soft, which is my favorite kind of contradiction. "Can I tell you something strange?" he asked, not opening his eyes. "Please do," I said. "I almost didn't message you. I thought your photo was too still. You looked like someone who enjoys Sunday afternoons. I was worried I'd be too much." "Too much what?" I asked. He opened his eyes and breathed out a laugh. "Too much thinking. Too many feelings. Not enough cool." "I don't think cool exists," I said. "I think we invented it to sell jackets." He turned toward me. "I've never heard anyone say that, and I've been looking for that sentence without knowing it. Sometimes when a moment is right, you can feel it." It's a soft click, like a key turning toward yes. We were sitting very near each other on that bench, our shoulders barely touching. He took a slow breath, and I could feel the rise and fall. I thought if we kiss, I want it to be under the same sky that held all our other days. I want to remember that we didn't make this up. "We joined it. Can I kiss you?" he asked. I want to put a pin right there on the asking. The care in that ask. The world doesn't end if you ask for what you want, and sometimes it begins. I whispered yes. He leaned in. It wasn't dramatic. It felt like placing a bookmark between pages you can't wait to read again. He tasted like coffee and a hint of cinnamon, and the ground felt steady under our feet. We didn't fall in love in a single afternoon. I don't want to sell you that. Love deserves accuracy. It hates shortcuts. But that afternoon changed something I honestly didn't expect it to change. My faith in what can happen when you walk towards someone instead of away. Meeting IRL didn't just confirm the chat, it expanded it. The person who made me laugh through a screen became a person whose laughter was the air around me. We started small, on purpose. A second date where we wandered a flea market and invented backstories for old photographs. A third date at a bookstore where I discovered he taps his fingers when he reads, like he's taking the book's pulse. He told me he'd made a promise to himself to move gently. I told him I wanted to be brave without being reckless. We did something older folks in my life always tell me is smart. We said what we meant, even when it felt awkward. "Are you seeing other people?" we asked, and then we answered honestly. We were casual at first, but the word casual felt like a shirt that didn't quite fit. We tried the word curious. That felt better. A week after we kissed at the pond, I made dinner at my place. Nothing fancy. A pasta I know like a lullaby, with a sauce that forgives you if you overthink it. He came in holding a small bouquet he got from the corner stand. Not the big dramatic flowers. Delicate stems with little yellow bells that looked like sunlight made solid. He set them in a glass on my counter as if he were putting down a thought he'd been carrying all day. My mom always said, "Bring something you can leave behind," he said. "Is that about flowers or opinions?" I asked. "Both," he laughed. We ate at my little table, legs bumping. I remember we talked about the shape of a day and how it matters. He liked mornings, so he could talk to himself before the world did. I liked late afternoons when you can feel the day thinking about changing clothes. We decided both are good and that the world is kinder when someone meets you where your favorite hours live. After dinner, we did dishes together, which is a type of dancing. He washed, I dried. We made a small team without naming it. If there's a lesson in adult life that took me too long, it's this. Pay attention to the quiet tasks. They tell the truth about people and about you. He didn't tease me when I stacked the plates wrong. I didn't flinch when he used too much soap. We adjusted to each other like bodies adjust to water. It wasn't all breezy. Here's the moment I owe you, because it's real. About 3 weeks in, I saw the app light up his phone face down on my table. It was a small thing, a single buzz. But small things have echoes when you want something to be big. "Hey," I said gently, "we should talk about the app." He looked at me, then at his phone, then back at me. "Yeah," he said. "We should." I breathed easier immediately because he didn't dodge the door. He opened it. "I still check it sometimes," he said. "Not because I'm looking for something else. Because I have friends on there. Because habit is strong. Honestly, because I haven't said to myself that I'm closing a door." He swallowed. "I don't want you to feel small about that. And I don't want to feel like I'm hiding. What would feel good to you?" I listened. I kept my voice low and steady so his nervous system would know it was welcome. "I don't want to police you," I said. "I also don't want to sit here imagining a party I'm not invited to. We don't have to make a rule forever right now. What if we agree to be intentional? If we're moving toward each other, we can move toward closing things we don't need." He nodded, relief visible like a tide going out. "I like that. Intentional. We can delete together. Or we can pause. Or we can set a check-in in 2 weeks and see how we feel." We picked the check-in. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning full of sunlight, we sat on his porch with coffee and the birds acting like they owned the place. We pulled out our phones like two people about to say yes to something that matters. We opened the app. He looked at me and said, "I met you here and I'm grateful. I also don't want to live here anymore." We deleted them. It felt oddly like moving. We didn't throw away who we'd been. We just decided to share an address. 2 days later, he texted me under the desk at work. "It's wild how much quieter my brain is." I wrote back, "I know. It's like taking off shoes that looked good but were a half size too small." We didn't become perfect because of that. We became present. That's better. He got overwhelmed one week and didn't text back for half a day, not because he didn't care, but because life came at him like a stack of papers in the wind. He apologized without making a speech. I told him I was scared of being an obligation, not because he made me feel like one, but because sometimes I forget I'm a choice. We held that conversation without flinching, and it taught us we could hold more. Meeting in person had changed the way we heard each other. On the app, it's easy to hear silence as disinterest. In real life, silence can be two people staring at the same point on the wall and feeling the same thing. On the app, a period can feel like a door close. In real life, a period is just the end of a sentence, and sometimes you want to add and keep going. I'm not knocking digital. I'm saying don't stop there if you can help it. There's something kind and sturdy about the way a voice sounds in a room. I met his friends at a backyard barbecue. They were warm, pleasantly nosy, full of advice I didn't ask for and was grateful to get. I grew up with a small family, so friend families have always amazed me, these webs we build on purpose. We talked about the best shows to binge when you're sick, the best soups to make when you want to take care of yourself, the best naps for Sundays. When someone asked how we met, I said, we matched on an app, and then we took it outside. It sounded like a protest rally for romance. Everyone cheered like we'd just announced an engagement, not because it was, but because hope is contagious. There was this moment with his friend Tasha that I think about when I need to feel brave. She pulled me aside and said, he's the careful kind, not the timid kind. There's a difference. If you need him to meet you, tell him where and when. He'll come. Love requires translators sometimes. She was ours that day. A month in, I invited him to my family's Sunday dinner. This was a bigger step than I wanted to admit. My family is loving and loud and sometimes careful like a bull in a china shop. They mean well with their whole bodies. My mother hugged him like they'd met in a dream and were finally catching up. My brother made him tease me, which is a sign of acceptance in our house. My sister asked him what his favorite snack is and then brought him 3 options without waiting for an answer. He held his own like a champion. When we left, my mother hugged me again at the door, whispered, "You look lighter," and patted my cheek as if I were still 12. That night, he texted me a picture of the leftovers she sent home with him and said, "Your mother feeds like she invented it." He told me the next week that he wasn't out to everyone in his family, and he didn't want to rush it just because we were happy, which is a wise thing to say. He wanted to move at a pace that honored who he'd been and who he was becoming. We talked about that with care. I told him I didn't need a flag. I needed the truth. He promised to keep bringing that truth as it changed shape. He invited me a few weeks later to meet his sister, and we watched a game together and yelled at the umpire like a team that had been formed 20 minutes earlier. She hugged me and then, very matter-of-factly, asked what kind of dog we wanted someday. I said I thought we should get a medium, objectively silly dog with eyebrows. She high-fived me. He smiled at us both like he'd found a room he didn't know he could enter. We collected small rituals like shells. We did the crossword together, alternating clues, declaring victory when we finished without texting any friends for help. We walked the same loop around the neighborhood every Wednesday and named the cats we saw, even though they clearly had names already. He taught me to play a song on the guitar, 1 chord at a time, until my fingers hurt in the good way. I taught him how to freeze grapes, which he pretended was a revelation on par with electricity. We made grocery lists together because nothing is hotter than domestic competence. We let the world be big and our life together be specific. The first time we were in a storm, the literal kind, I watched how he is in weather. We were at a farmer's market when the sky darkened like it had just remembered something heavy. The rain came. People squealed and ran. He stepped closer, not to shield me. He's taller, but not tall enough to be a roof, but to share the surprise. He laughed when the first drop hit his cheek like a rumor. We ducked under a tent and did that thing strangers do in weather, talk kindly because we're all getting rained on. He kept looking at me to make sure I was still there, and I was. And it was beautiful. After we walked home under one umbrella, which is a test of choreography and patience, he carried it because he's better at aiming. I held his elbow and thought about how there are a dozen little ways to say, "I'm here," that don't use words. Then came the night we argued. It wasn't dramatic. No one slammed a door. But our good intentions tangled. He had a long day. I had a short fuse. He canceled a plan without explaining why. I filled the empty space with a story, which is a skill and a hazard. "I'm not being prioritized," the story said. "This is the beginning of the end," that old ghost hissed. I took a walk to shake the ghost off. He called while I was walking and said, I'm sorry I canceled and went quiet. There's a client whose world is falling apart. I'm trying to be a dam, and I forgot I also have a river here. I stopped on a corner and watched a bus hiss to a stop, watched the door fold open, watched people step down holding their own evenings. The streetlight made the wet pavement look like it had secrets. I told myself a story, I said. It wasn't a kind one. It tried to protect me, but it forgot you. He was quiet for a breath. I appreciate your stories, he said. Can we write a new one? Yes, I said. This one starts with 2 people learned how to ask for what they need in 3 sentences or less. He laughed, then exhaled like a window cracked. He told me what he needed, a quick text when he's running behind, a simple thinking of you when my mind is chewing on worries, permission to say, I need to take 20 minutes and then I'm yours. I told him what I needed, a good morning, even when mornings are messy. Honesty that doesn't require me to play detective. The benefit of the doubt unless we have evidence to the contrary. We wrote these down like we were writing our own recipe. Meeting in person taught us that maintenance is intimate. Anyone can show up once with flowers and a smile that could sell toothpaste. The real treat is the person who shows up on a Tuesday with a grocery bag and a joke and the willingness to do the boring thing so you can both get to the good stuff. Summer arrived like an exclamation point, and we found ourselves doing that thing that makes you feel like a teenager even when you have a mortgage. Eating ice cream on the curb, showing each other the pictures on our phones we hadn't posted, making plans and then changing them because a walk sounded better. We went to a minor league game one night, the kind where the crowd is friendly and the hot dogs taste like nostalgia. He leaned in, cheek to my shoulder, and I realized I'd been waiting to share that exact weight for years without naming it. One evening, we sat on his porch while the city hummed softly, like an animal content. He took a breath and said, I want to tell you one more thing. It's a little silly and a little important. He looked at his hands. I've never had a relationship that felt good in daylight. Nights were easier. Less expectation. Less clarity. This, us, feels good at 8 a.m. when I have bedhead and coffee breath. It feels good while the mail gets delivered and the neighbor waters his plants. Meeting you in the world, the real, bright world, changed. I don't know. It changed my idea of what I deserve. I swallowed hard and sat with that because it deserves a good seat. I'm glad, I said. I want to be a daylight person. I want to be someone you can count on when the sun's out and when it isn't. I want to keep showing up at the hour neither of us thought could hold this. We didn't rush to the next milestone. We didn't make promises that require ceremonies to keep. But near the end of summer, on a Saturday when the air felt like a clean sheet, we went to the shelter just to look. You know how that goes. We met a small, enthusiastic dog with eyebrows like punctuation and a tail that confused itself with a metronome. We looked at each other and felt the new kind of click, the kind that says, we could take care of this together. We named him Rufus because he looked like one. Even if he had another name 5 minutes earlier, Rufus taught us what teamwork looks like with paws. We walked him, fed him, took turns doing the unsung chores. We celebrated the first time he sat on command like we'd discovered helium. We cleaned up the inevitable mistakes and treated each other gently on the days we slept less. A dog is a good test of and we felt sturdy. My mother sent a care package of treats and a sweater he absolutely didn't need but wore like a king. The day I knew for sure we were building something that didn't need qualifiers, we were sitting on the floor of my living room, surrounded by tax documents and a spreadsheet on my laptop, trying to figure out how to plan a small trip without breaking the bank. Fun, right? The glamorous life. I was muttering at the screen. He put a hand on my knee. Hey, he said, we'll do this together. There's no prize for doing it alone. I laughed, almost cried, and thought about every time in my life I'd tried to earn love by being the most independent. Turns out the prize for doing things together is doing things together. So we picked a weekend away to the coast, a cheap motel with crisp sheets and a window that listened to the ocean. We drove with the windows down and sang along to songs we kind of knew. We walked on the beach and skipped stones with embarrassing accuracy. We ate fried food and declared it medicinal. We fell asleep to the sound of water and woke up to gulls insisting we pay attention. In the morning, his hair was a mess and my face had the lines pillows give you as gifts. And we grinned at each other like kids who snuck out and didn't get caught. If you're watching this and wondering if this is the part where everything becomes perfect, I'll save you the suspense. It doesn't. But it becomes realer, kinder. The edges stay, but they soften. I still sometimes want to hide when I get nervous. He still sometimes wants to overthink until it's an Olympic sport. But we have made a small home in each other where those habits aren't foes. They're characters we know by name. We give them snacks and tell them to rest while the grown-ups handle it. The app where we met feels like an old neighborhood now. I don't badmouth it. I thank it when it comes up. It gave me the nudge I needed, the square of light that became a room. It brought me to a lane in the park where the trees make a roof and a bench, where we leaned in and learned the weather of each other's breath. Meeting in person didn't erase the way we met. It honored it. It took the story from a screen and gave it legs. It made it walk. We still laugh about our first messages. He pretends to be scandalized by the fish in a bow tie joke. I hold hands with him in the grocery store and whisper, sophisticated, when we pass the salmon. We tell our story to friends and to strangers because stories are lights. And sometimes you need to see someone else holding one to believe you can hold your own. If you asked me what changed, really I'd say this: I stopped bracing. The quiet in my house sounds like peace now, not like loneliness wearing a coat. The refrigerator hum is just the fridge doing its job, not the soundtrack to going it alone. My phone buzzes and I don't jump. And on Sunday afternoons, the hour I love most, there's a coffee cup on my table that isn't mine. A pair of shoes by the door that make the floor look like it's telling a story about being used well. We matched on a grid. We met in a cafe that smelled like cinnamon and second chances. We walked to a bench where the ducks pretended not to read signs. We asked gentle questions and answered them with the kind of honesty that makes you sleep better. We argued like people who intend to keep knowing each other, and we apologized like people who mean it. We deleted an app together and kept the part of it that mattered: the opening. I won't promise anyone that meeting IRL will solve everything. But I can say, hand on my heart, that seeing his face in the afternoon light cracked something open that had been trying to open for years. When he smiled for real, not in pixels, I learned that hope looks like a person choosing a table near yours. When he asked me, with care, if he could kiss me, I remembered that consent can be tender and still electric. When we picked a dog and washed dishes and did laundry and showed up tired and left the porch light on for each other, I discovered that love might be less about fireworks and more about knowing where the matches are kept. Now, as I sit here, Rufus snoring like a tiny motorcycle on the couch, Marco reading a book with his feet tucked under him, the plant in the corner being dramatic, I'm grateful. Not just for the romance. You'll notice I haven't used the word soulmate because souls are mysterious and mates are made, not found. I'm grateful for the way meeting him in the not quite straight line of real time taught me to listen differently, to adjust. To say, I'm here, and mean it, and prove it in small ways over and over. If you're watching this and you're where I was, opening an app in a quiet house, telling yourself it's just noise, let me offer a hand across the room. There might be a face in those squares that makes your shoulders drop and your breath go soft. There might be a person who says, let's meet somewhere with good light and too many plants. There might be a table waiting. Bring your worst joke. Bring your favorite coffee order. Bring your gentleness and your nervous laugh and your decision to not run for the exit the second you feel seen. Because sometimes the grid isn't just a grid. Sometimes it's a map. And when you step off it and into the afternoon, when you say yes to the small brave thing of showing up, you might find that IRL doesn't just change what you do, it changes how you feel about what's possible. It changes how you say good morning. It changes how you come home. And if your meet cute happens under fluorescent lights instead of golden hour, or if your first kiss tastes like peppermint gum someone panicked and popped in at the last second, that's fine. The point isn't perfect. The point is present. The point is that you're both standing there with your real hands and your real eyes and your real histories. Choosing again and again. When we matched on Grindr, I didn't know I'd be sitting here months later, able to tell this story with the ease that comes from living inside it. I didn't know about the way he says my name when he's half asleep. I didn't know about the way his laugh can make a Tuesday feel like a holiday. I didn't know about the way our two slightly different versions of folding towels would become an inside joke that could disarm an argument in 5 seconds. I didn't know that a face on a grid could become the place I want to go when I'm tired and when I'm not. But here we are. We matched. We met. We kept meeting. And it changed everything after.